Good afternoon or good morning, everybody, and welcome to the InduSoft webinar, Stump the Expert, the last webinar of 2015 from the InduSoft series. I'd like to start with a big thank you to all of you during your support, not only through the webinar series today, but also throughout the whole year. InduSoft keeps growing very aggressively, and it's literally thanks to you, to our partners, our customers, who keep using the product and evolving along with InduSoft. So thank you so much for your support, and we look forward to continue working with you and continue growing with you in 2016. As you probably know, this webinar is different from most. We do not have a predefined agenda. It's open for questions, so if you have any specific questions or if you want specific examples about projects that you have to develop or have developed, it's completely open. So feel free to write your questions on the webinar Q&A box or on the chat box. You can access the webinar interfaces using the toolbar on the top of your monitor. Again, you can either click on the chat box or click on the arrow on the right side of the bar and click on Q&A. And I'll be addressing the questions as they arrive. In the meantime, before new questions arrive, I'll jump into a few questions that were posted in the previous webinar this morning. So one of them is, how can I attach a numeric value 0 to 255 for a linked symbol property tag to use for security level of internal objects? So it's a question specifically about linked symbols and how to customize the security level in a linked symbol. So I'll create a new project here. Webinar, afternoon 2015. So creating a brand new project. And first, a quick review about linked symbols. Linked symbols in InduSoft is the ability for you to create your own objects with animations and reuse those objects in many different screens or many different instances throughout one project or different projects, and have the ability in most cases to assign custom properties, different values for specific properties of this object in each instance of this object. So just creating a quick example here. Can create a simple ellipse here, apply the color dynamic, and here to control the color, instead of hard coding a tag value, I will create a custom property with the syntax #, then the name of the custom property, like my tag, colon, and optionally a default value. In this case, I'm not going to use any default value. So my tag is just a placeholder, an alias, the name of this custom property, which can be replaced by different tag values or numeric values or even expressions on each instance of this object. I'll also add a command to this object, and I'll have here my tag equals to toggle $my tag. So when I click on this object, I'll toggle the value of the tag associated with the property my tag, and it will change the color of this ellipse. So I can right click and create a linked symbol, like my linked symbol, could be any name. And now I can associate tags to this object, like here, can associate the tag A, just created an integer tag with the name A, and here I create a tag B, just created an integer tag with the name B. Can save this screen and run the application. So here I can click on each one of those symbols individually and change the color of each one of those symbols individually. But the question is, how can I use custom properties to control the security level of those objects? So if I go back here to the master symbol, added link symbol, the commands property has a security level where you can assign a number from 0 to 255. The security field is a number-only field, which means that you cannot have a custom property here. However, there is a solution for the problem using a built-in function called check security level. So this built-in function called check security level, where you define a level, let's create another custom property called security, for example. So when I pass a security level to this function returns 1 if the current user in the application has rights to that security level, or 0 otherwise. So what I can do here is a simple if statement. If security level with the security value passed as a custom property is equal to 1, then I toggle the value. Otherwise, I do nothing. So, forgot the pound sign here before the custom property because it's a VB script interface. Say OK. Save the master symbol. Save it. And now I need to create a security system with the correct users and groups. So I'm going to enable the security system. I'm going to configure, I'll leave the guest user from 0 to 0, and I'll create a new group called admin with the level 0 to 255. Then I'll leave the guest user linked to the guest group, and I'll create a new admin user linked to the admin group. So the level, the user admin has rights from 0 to 255 and guest 0 to 0. For this object, I'll set the security property to 100. So only admin should be able to toggle the values in this object. And in this one, I'll leave the security as 0. And finally, I'll create a button here to log on. I will show here the current user with the tag username. And when I click on this button, I want to call the function log on. Change the label here accordingly. Save. So let's see how it works. The current user is guest. So when I click, let's just changing one thing here. Here in command, I'll have a default value 0. Save yes. Save it. Very good. Very good. So with the user guest, I click on the first object and nothing happens. On the second one, I can trigger the values. If I log on as admin, now I can trigger I can toggle both objects. And again, if I log on as guest, I cannot trigger the first one, but I can trigger the second one. So that's how you can easily assign a security level to linked symbols using custom properties. So have another question here. I have a screen with 10 motors on a screen, and I want to set up a pop-up box that will have parameters passed to the pop-up based on which motor is selected. What is the fastest way to create that screen and pass 10 parameters to the screen? There are many different ways. I will show at least some, the most common ones and the easiest ones. Let's say that we have a tag called motor, So in your case, you have 10 different motors, right? Or even better, let's create a class. Let's create a class motor where you have here state and you have, for instance, name. And name is a string. And then you have here motors from the class cMotor. And you have 10 of them. So you have motor index1.state, motor index1.name, motor index2.state, motor index2.name, and so on and so forth. And then you want to place those motors on the screen. I can go here to the system symbols, look for motors, and let's pick any one here, like for instance this one. And in this particular motor here, I can associate one tag. Let's say this one is motor index1.state. And I have a second one. In this second one, I would have motor index2.state and so on and so forth. But now I want to open a pop-up for each one of those motors when I click on them. So let's create the pop-up here. Let's create this screen with the size 300 by 300. Let's make a pop-up, thin border. The title could be motor details, something like that. So I can right-click, change the background color to something else. Create a button here to close the screen. So change the label on the button to close. And when I click here, I want to execute the function close motor pop-up, for example, for the name of this pop-up. And then I can save as motor pop-up. Very well, I can go to graphics. That's a nice tip as well for pop-ups and dialogues. You can go to graphics, click here in layout. Then you can right-click on your screen and center. It will automatically change the screen attributes, the top and left, to make sure the screen is centralized on your monitor, on the center of your monitor. So very well, here I'm going to have one of those motors. But here, for this motor, the index should not be hard-coded because you want to reuse this pop-up for all the motors. So I'm going to create an integer tag for this index here, like ID, for example. Could be any tag, an integer tag called ID. And here on the top, I want to show the value of the tag motor index ID dot name. So here I'll show the name of the motor. Very well, good enough for now. I can close this motor pop-up. Now, when I click on this motor here, on this first one, by the way, it's a linked symbol. Let's edit this linked symbol. So I want to create something special for this linked symbol. And when I click on this linked symbol, I can create here a rectangle with command. And when I click on this linked symbol, I want to do something with it. In addition to opening, to controlling the color of the motor, I also want to toggle this property. So I'm going to make this tag equals, no, not toggle, sorry. What I want to do is open the screen. And the name of the screen is motor pop-up. But before opening the screen, I want to set the tag ID with the index from the tag state. So this field here, index, returns the array index from the tag associated with the field. So I'm going to write to the tag ID the index of the array associated with each motor. And then I open the motor pop-up. Then I can make this rectangle here invisible very easily just by changing its field to no field and its border to none. So I just changed it for both motors. Can save it. And now when I click here, I open motor 1. I click here, I open motor 2. How do I know for sure if they are motors 1 and 2? So let's make motor 1.name has the value A. We'll have the, oh, I think I didn't create it as a string. Let's see. Name, yes. So the value A. Oh, the current user does not allow me to do that. Let's go to the security system and disable it so I can write through the database file. There you go. And motor 2.name has the value B. So now let's go to the runtime. I click on this motor. This is the motor A. I click on this one. This is the motor B. And I can change the state on the pop-up as well. So I will come here to the motor pop-up. And I can create buttons, for instance, to turn this motor on or off. So let's change the label here to turn on. And when I click here, I want to set the tag motor index ID dot state to 1. And another button here, when I click on this button, I change the state to 0 with the label turn off. Save it. Now I click on this one, I can turn on and turn off the first motor. I click on the second one, I can turn on and turn off the second motor. I did here for 2, but could be for 10, for a million, doesn't matter. Just by changing the ID, the value of the ID integer tag before opening the pop-up, I can now access any one of the N motors in my application. That's one way of doing that. You can also use indirect tags, and you can also use what's called mnemonics. So just to show a quick example with mnemonics, I'll create another screen here saying, for instance, let's just copy this pop-up here to save time. Save as motor pop-up 2, for example, a second pop-up. And in this one, I'm going to use a different approach. Instead of using arrays, which is the easiest way, let's say I have name of motors like motor A and motor B, for example, right? So now I want to open this pop-up with the motor A or motor B. So here, I will use what we call mnemonics. So it's going to be, let's create a mnemonic called motor. And by default, I will use the tag motor A name. I'll show the name of the tag motor A. And here to this object, I'm going to link this link symbol, and I'm going to change this object. Let me now create a new link symbol here. Create a new link symbol, motor 2, for example. Okay. Now I can edit this link symbol. And what I do different now is, instead of using an ID tag, when I open the screen, I pass the value of the mnemonic. So I open the screen with the coordinates -1, -1, -1, -1, which means open the screen in the original screen attributes position. Do not resize it. ID 0, a single pop-up, but I want to pass here the value of the mnemonic motor that will be defined in each linked symbol. So far here, motor ID, or let's call motor name, or better, motor tag. It's better here. Okay, so save it. In this guy, I'll use the edit link symbol. For the state, let me move the rectangle. For the state, I'll use now not tag state, but motor with motor A here. And for this one, motor A equals 1. So I changed the link symbol to use mnemonics now. Save it, okay. And here to turn on, I'm gonna use motor A equals 1. And this one will be mnemonic motor A equals 0. And here, when I close the pop-up 2. Save it. Now, let me bring this new link symbol back here. And now in this link symbol, I have motor A, and I can edit this link symbol. And just one last thing here that I forgot. When I open, it's not motor tag. It's motor and whatever I pass as the argument of the button. Motor A. It is correct. And the name of the screen is the pop-up 2. Very good. Save it. Yes. I have this first one here. So I click on this one. I open the control for motor A. And I click on the second one. I have the same save. And I pass the same controls to motor B. And I can control each one of those motors individually. So again, I can use either in mnemonics, indirect tags, where I pass the name of the motor I want to change, or I can use array index, where I just set one tag with the index of the array I want to change. The arrays is easier, but the mnemonics give you the flexibility to use different tag names, completely different tag names, and not necessarily use arrays. So let's see, additional questions. Could talk about the advantages, disadvantages of using SQLDB for logging versus the InduSoft proprietary format? Absolutely. The InduSoft history tasks, which are the events, the trends, and the alarm, they can be saved either into the InduSoft proprietary format or into a relational SQL Server database. So for trend, for example, you have here proprietary or database. In database, you can save data to a remote database. For alarms and events, you can go to projects, options, and change the format to proprietary. Binary is just an encrypted version of the proprietary, or database as well. The advantage of the proprietary format is the fact that it's easy to do and you do not have to install or configure anything else. So it's very straightforward. Just to make a quick example, let's create a couple of tags here. Let's say pressure and level. And let's say to save them every second in the proprietary format. Trend worksheet number 1. And let's create a couple of alarms here. When pressure is higher than 90, pressure too high. When level is higher than 80, I have level too high. And I want to save it to the history, by default to the proprietary history format. Save yes. Now back to the screen. I can bring some controls here, some sliders. Let's use this one. On this slider, I can change pressure. In another slider, I can change level. And bring a trend control here, where I can show the points, pressure and level, with different colors like blue and red. And I can show an alarm control where I show the online alarms, and another alarm control, moving a little bit down here, down the screen, where I show the history of alarms. Good enough for now. Can run it. So I keep changing here. I can keep changing the values of the tags, and you see the different values on the screen for pressure and for level. Now I can generate alarms as well. As you see here, acknowledge the alarms, and here you see the online alarms, and down below the history of alarms. So it just works. It's showing the history here. It's for trains and for alarms. And all the history data is being automatically created in binary files, in InduSoft proprietary files. If I go to the application directory, app path, and expand here, by default, the trend history files are saved in the HST subfolder of the application, and the file syntax is group number, so 01 means group 1, year 2015, month 12, day 30. So one file per trend worksheet per day, automatically created there. And for the alarms, in the alarm subfolder, the syntax is AL, year, month, day. So 15, 12, 30.ALH. And if you enable events as well, would be EV, year, month, day.EVT in the alarm subfolder as well. So most customers do not even know where the history data is saved because it's so automatic. Everything is saved there, individual files, one history file per day for alarms, one history file per day per worksheet for trains, and it just works, and very simple, very straightforward. If you want to save data to an external database, it is quite simple to do with InduSoft Web Studio as well. You can select any external SQL relational database, even databases on the cloud like SQL Azure. We have customers successfully using it. In my particular example, I'm going to use SQL Express, which is free of charge up to 10 gigabytes. So I'll create a new database here, like webinar. And now from InduSoft, all I have to do is link InduSoft to this database. So I go to default database, select here SQL Server as my provider, type here the name of the server where the database is running, and select my database, in this case here, webinar. Test the connection succeeded, and then I can tell InduSoft, save alarms and events to the database. and tell the worksheets, the trained worksheets, save those tag values, history, into the database. And that's all. I don't have to change the screens. I don't have to change tags, scripts, nothing. So as you see here, I can change values. In the trained control, automatically retrieves the value from the database, generates alarm history, and retrieves the alarm history from the database. If I go to the database webinar, under tables, I can view the data from the trained 001 table, and you see the timestamp and the values for the tag pressure and level. And if you go to alarm, you'll see the values for the alarms here in this table as well. So from the configuration point of view, both of them are quite simple. I would say the proprietary is easier and simpler because you do not have to install an external database, an external tool. And the main advantage of using an external database is to share information with other systems or generate reports. It's much easier for an external system to understand and retrieve data from a SQL relational database table, which supports the standard SQL commands, than retrieving data from the InduSoft proprietary files, binary files, which are, again, by definition, proprietary. It would not be so easy for them to retrieve, for an external system to retrieve data from InduSoft history file, trained or alarm, and manipulate this data. So whenever you want to share this information with other systems, an external database is a better option. Another reason to use an external database instead of the proprietary files is when you want to generate statistical reports, dashboards, any kind of mining into this data. SQL provides built-in functions to do things like average, sum, minimum, max, and so on. That is much easier to do if you're saving this data into an external SQL database than if you're saving into the InduSoft proprietary format. So to sum up, if you just want to save the data, and the only reason to save the data is to visualize this data using the native objects from InduSoft and nothing else, the proprietary format, which is the default, would suffice. If you want to share this information with other systems, or if you want to generate dashboards and reports, retrieving, filtering, and calculating data based on the history points, the database would be a better option. Hopefully it answers your question. So another question here, is it possible to have more than one instance of the motor pop-up? Yes, it is possible to have multiple instances of the pop-up open at the same time, but to do that, you need to use mnemonics. You cannot use the array option. So to make it simpler and easier to understand, let's go back here to the mnemonics interface and create something completely new. So let's create here another pop-up. Let's say 100 by 100. It's a pop-up. And here in the title bar, let's call test. So a small pop-up here. Can go with this color. Let's make this screen a little bit bigger. Maybe 200 by 200. Better. And I'll have the close later. And here, I'm going to have a single property called my prop. My property, no default value yet. And I'm going to save this screen as the test screen. Now I'm going to have a button here, command. And in this command, I'm going to open the screen test in the position it is, -1, -1, -1, -1. not resizing it, but I'm going to pass as argument my prop with the value, let's say the tag seconds. Let me just go back there. Oh, actually this parameter here is the ID, and the last one is the mnemonic list. So I'm passing seconds as the mnemonic list. Save it, and I open and I show the value of the tag seconds. Can come here, a different button, and show the value of the tag time, for example. So I click here, I see the value of the tag seconds. I click here, I see the value of the tag time, different tags. Now, what if I want to open those two pop-ups at the same time? That's where this parameter right here, this one right here, sorry, this one right here called ID comes into place. By default, you use 0, so you open this pop-up with the ID 0. You can open the same screen, the same pop-up again with the ID 1, 2, and 3, which means different instances of the same pop-up. So this one, I'm going to open with the instance 1. Actually, let's make 2. And this first one, I'm going to open with the ID 1. So can save it. I click here. I open the screen with the ID 1, and I click here, and I open the same pop-up with the ID 2. So I have the same pop-up test opened simultaneously with two different IDs, one showing the value seconds, another one showing the value time. Very, very powerful. And you can open as many as you want. So hopefully it answers your question that yes, it is possible to open more than one instance of the pop-ups and keep them open. And again, the secret for that, the solution for that, is in the built-in function open, set this ID property here in the IntelliSense, this ID property to a unique number for each instance of the pop-up. And by the way, when you close it, you can tell the system to close this screen based on the ID. So if I just say here, close test, it will try by default to close the test with the ID 0. So I need to tell him what is the ID to test. So how do I tell this pop-up what is the ID to test? Typically, we create a custom property called ID, let's say by default 0. Oh, forgot the pounds here. So I created a custom property called ID. Could have any name, but I happen to call 0 here. And here in this button, in addition to the property myProp, I can pass also the property ID with the value 1 here. And on the second button, I will pass also the property ID with the value 2. I can pass several custom properties, several mnemonics to the same pop-up using space as the delimiter between them. So I open the first one, I open the second one, I have those two screens open individually, and I can close each one of them individually as well. Clear? Good. Good feedback. It looks like the question was answered. See if I have any other questions. Can you have the same tag, pressure and level, with two different values, high and low, with different values in the same alarm sheet, thus not having to create two different tags with different values? Absolutely. If I understood the question, let me read it just one more time. Can you have the same tag, pressure and level, with two different values, high and low, with different values in the same alarm sheet, thus not having to create two different tags? Not sure I understood you. You could have here in the spreadsheet, in the alarm sheet, let's go back there. I can have pressure 90 and I can have pressure 10, for example, with low, and say pressure too low, and I could optionally have level low, let's say 10, and level too low. This is possible, and I don't have to create additional tags to have high and low for the same given tag. And now I have alarm high, alarm low for pressure, high and low for level. But if the question about combining them, if the question is if I could have like an expression here, pressure plus level, and define a limit high and low to the result of the expression, the answer is no. In the alarm worksheet, only tags can trigger alarms. If you want to trigger an alarm based on an expression, you need to generate, calculate the expression in another interface, like in a script, and create here, like for instance, my tag equals to pressure plus level, for example. Save. And now you use the tag my tag here in the alarm worksheet. And let's say if it's higher than 180, then you have combined high. And if my tag is lower than, let's say, 20, you have combined low, something like that. Save it. And now let's clean here. You have a combined low, of course, in this case here, they are both very low. If I come to this one, 12, it's done, but the combined is still low. If I come here, now the combined is gone because the 9 plus 12 is higher than 20. So you can play with those two tags to have an expression, but you need to configure single tags in the alarm spreadsheet. Excellent. Thank you. Another question, as far as saving to the external database, how would you add a trigger, say, to the start running of a machine to start or stop saving to an external database when saving data to be saved at 1 second interval? If I understood, you want to do something like while the machine is running, you want to save data every second, and if the machine is not running, you want to stop saving every second. There are different ways to do that. Let's see at least some typical options. Let's say you have one tag. Let's create a new tag called machine running, right? Or even better, let's say machine stopped. It's going to be easier this way. You'll notice why in a minute. So let's assume that every time the machine is not running, this tag machine stopped has the value 1. So here in the trained worksheet, you can say save data every second, but here in advanced, you can use the disable field with the tag machine stopped. So every time the machine stopped is 1, you disable this worksheet. In other words, you stop saving data. when the machine is running, the machine stopped goes to 0, so you do not disable this spreadsheet anymore, and InduSoft keeps saving data every second. That's one way of doing that, just using a tag in the disable field and make sure that this tag has a value different from 0 while you do not want to save data. That's one way. Other way would be to do something like this. Instead of using the tag seconds here, you use your own tag, like save trigger, for example. And then here in the scheduler, you can say, by the way, the save trigger could be a tag that comes from the PLC. So the PLC itself toggles this tag every second while you want to save data, and the PLC stops toggling this tag when you do not want to save data anymore. This would be another way. Or you can use the scheduler and say, for instance, every second, I want to make the tag save trigger, not save trigger, which means toggle this tag every second. But again, you can use any expression in the disable. So you could say, stop doing that if machine stopped equals 1, for example. So you have the same result. When the machine stopped is 1, I disable this line, so I stop toggling this tag. And by stop toggling this tag, I stop saving data to the database. So at least two similar but slightly different ways to accomplish what you need. And hopefully it answers your question there. If not, let me know and I will revisit. So another question, I have a cycle time value on a PLC register. How do I read the value just after the machine finished the cycle? So I assume that you, well, in this case, you need to read at least, you need to know when the machine finished the cycle, right? So this information is either given to you by the operator, or this information is something you need to be reading continuously from the PLC. So you need to have a tag that tells you that the cycle was finished. Again, so let's create here a tag called cycle state, for example, right? So somehow either a button on the screen, has to toggle this tag, for instance, toggle the cycle state. Either that, yes, I used a different name. Oh no, created. Either that, or you create a driver sheet. Let's assume you're using the Modbus protocol, but could be any driver, any protocol. But another option is to keep reading this value continuously from the PLC. So whatever it is, your PLC, let's say holding register 1, whatever it is, you keep reading this information continuously. Now, when it changes, you want to read the cycle value only after it changes, right? So in this case, you can create here a standard driver sheet to read the cycle value, whatever it is you want to read in whatever address it is from the same PLC or a different PLC. And you use here in the read trigger the cycle state. So what happens is you are continuously reading the cycle state. When the cycle finishes, then let's assume that this address in the PLC toggles only after the cycle finishes. And then when this tag toggles, it triggers a read trigger in this worksheet to read the cycle value or values that you want to read by the end of the cycle. And then you could use the read completed to save this data to the database. So you could have here another tag, read completed. And when this tag toggles, when this tag changes of value, is because InduSoft finished reading all the values from this worksheet. And then you can do whatever you want to do with them. Save to a report, send by email, open a screen, whatever you want. Okay. Good. Sounds like a few feedback here, positive feedbacks. Good. I appreciate it. Another one. Without Microsoft Office installed, how can I get Microsoft Datetimepicker Activex control, or is there another Activex control that can accomplish the same task? Excellent question. The answer is there is another control that can be used to accomplish the same task, and it is a control created by InduSoft. So if you come here, there is a control called Studio Datetimepicker, which is very simple but provides the basic ability to allow you to pick a date and time. And it has format and value as properties, just one method that you don't have to use an about box. So from a simplistic point of view, you can have a tag here like my date. Let's create this tag as a string. And just to show how it works, I will create here a rectangle to show the value of the tag, my date. Save it. And now I have this Datetimepicker, and as you see here, I can select different dates. And I have to enable the set here. Let's go, we scan always, because it's not event-driven. So I can select a different date here, and as you see there, it selects a different date on the InduSoft tag. So you could use this Studio Datetimepicker, which is always installed along with InduSoft Web Studio. It has been developed by InduSoft, so you do not depend on having Microsoft Office or any other software in the computer to use the Datetimepicker. Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? I think I covered all the questions here so far. I'll give just a few additional seconds here. If you have another question, please let me know. But looks like that covers it all. So with that, I'll just make a quick note here about something that came up on the webinar this morning, and it will be available in our website. Someone asked how to consume web services, in that particular case, to get weather information, temperature, dew point, humidity from publicly available web services. And here is the script I wrote during the webinar this morning showing how to do that. So in a few days, we're going to publish on our website the Stump the Expert webinar video, where I show line by line and explain line by line how to write this script. And I will also make this script available there. So whenever or if you have the requirement to retrieve information from a web service using InduSoft Web Studio, you could use this script as an example. Especially this function here, this getXML node value, is a generic function which allows you to pass a URL and a node path for an XML response, and this function returns the value of that response. So again, all this information will be readily available on the website in a couple of days. With that, again, I would like to thank all of you. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch the webinar. I know it's almost New Year's Eve and the last business days for most of us. So thank you very much for taking the time to watch the webinar, for your support the whole year, and I really look forward to continue working with you in 2016. Thank you all, and have a great 2016.